The Academy of Esports podcast is powered by LeagueSpot. LeagueSpot, your brand, your league, your way. Welcome to the Academy of Esports podcast. I am your host, James O'Hagan. I am thrilled for this episode because I get to hang out with one of my favorite people, not just in gaming, not just in esports, not just in this industry that I love to talk about, but in life in general. I get to hang out with Mark Candella, aka Garvey, Chief Business and Strategy Officer at AcadArena. Garvey, thank you for being a guest on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me again. This is our second talk in 5 or 6 years.
You were we're on year 6 of the podcast. And as you can tell, and maybe I'll do a splice right here and put in some of the old video because you and I were both much younger men at the time. And I was sitting at my dining room table, I think a couple of blocks from where I live right now. And it was a very different look. We were in very different places. You were working at Twitch. I was working for Racine Unified School District, and our lives have changed dramatically in that time. But before we jump into all of that, I have an icebreaker question, and I've been asking this question of my other guests, and I've kind of solidified it down to one. So here we go. A door opens, a fog machine fills the archway with mist. You're probably actually just walking out of your house where you live now and into the outdoors because that's how hot it is, giving people a hint. The crowd holds its breath as your shadow appears in the distance, striding towards your grand entrance. What song is the DJ playing?
First of all, let me roll a D20 for perception to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Okay.
Let's see. I would probably say, and this is going to sound crazy, but Mobb Deep, Survival of the Fittest. Is that Mobb Deep?
I think it's Mobb Deep, but anything Mobb Deep is good.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll take that. All right. So as you're striding here forward, you have as a unique background as your musical choice, because I don't think a lot of people would select Mobb Deep as the song. Garvey, you are probably one of the biggest supporters I have ever come across in all of my professional career when it comes to not just supporting teachers, but also supporting students in this space. We talk a lot about students who have, the opportunities in gaming and esports to do things, but you really laid, I think, a groundwork for what that can actually look like, not just with your work at Twitch, but how you've advocated for students and for teachers in this space, in a space that really hasn't, up until recently, been really accepting of educators in the space. But to get where you are, because you are not a traditional educator, okay? Your background is definitely not that. In fact, I love your background so much because we probably, I don't know if you were ever a Jones Beach goer. Probably not. You're more of a Rockaway Beach kind of goer, I would have guessed, right? Probably.
Manhattan Beach, Rockaway Beach, yeah. Okay.
So we probably didn't bump into each other because my grandfather always took us out to Jones Beach on Long Island. But you grew up in Brooklyn, and talk about your experience growing up in Brooklyn, because again, you don't have a background to me that says somebody who's going to be supportive and loving of educators and students necessarily just by that.
Yeah, that came, I think I fully appreciated that a little bit later in life. And I'll probably get to that in a quick background, but grew up very poor in Brooklyn, Flatbush and Nostrand Avenue, Vanderveer Estates. Been on my own since I'm 15 years old. Quite the opposite of the way I live my life right now. And maybe we could talk a little bit about like the origins of Garvey and why I like to be called Garvey as opposed to Mark. So was on my own, was living rough, wasn't a very nice person. I was quite aggressive, quite angry. But I had a friend from a middle-class family. And taking a step back just a little bit, I grew up in a Caribbean neighborhood. So my nickname growing up was Marcus Garvey. and that's what all my friends used to call me growing up. Again, I was quite firm in my stances, a bit aggressive. So that name just kind of stuck to me. But about 16 years old, I had a friend from a middle-class family that had an apartment, had a steady family life, saw I wasn't doing so well. So he invited me over for Sunday, every other week. He had Sunday family day. And that consisted of an uncle from Long Island that would drive in and they would play Family Day Dungeons and Dragons. So he invited me over.
Hold on a second. So first of all, so we're talking, okay, so first of all, because you dropped a reference here, Marcus Garvey as a political activist in the New York area, very Jamaican, I believe, as well, correct?
Jamaican, yes.
So to get that kind of credibility, as your friends in this Caribbean neighborhood are referring to you as Marcus Garvey, that must have been, again, you don't get called one of the greatest political activist nicknames, as your nickname. So that in of itself is tremendous. But then you're also playing Dungeons and Dragons in 1986 when CBS was doing stories on 60 Minutes about the evils of Dungeons and Dragons and how it was bringing kids into the satanic cult. And you're saying that adults were getting together and families were getting together to play this game on the weekends with you?
Yeah, it's not that odd when you come to think about where I grew up and how I grew up and the specific circumstances in Brooklyn in the 80s. It's the same root cause, I believe, as the reason why graffiti was invented in New York City. Not invented, but blew up in New York City. And graffiti was just a way for those that didn't have anything, that weren't seen, didn't have their voice heard, didn't have anything in life, to be seen and to have their name at least read and known. So it was a kind of like a form of escapism, right? To kind of distract us from the really poor circumstances, the lack of opportunity, the lack of being seen, the not being able to be heard, not having a voice in anything. And I believe, Dungeons and Dragons for some back then was a form of escapism from, what we were dealing with in life. And it was really, really, to say the least, a difficult life on Flatbush Avenue in the 80s, and particularly 1986. That's when the crack cocaine epidemic really took hold there. So yeah, we were just looking, to experience something a little bit different than our everyday lives, kind of escape from that, even if it was for a couple hours every other week, or going bombing and, tagging and doing pieces on subway trains and overpasses on highways and stuff like that. Again, I think it was just more of a way to distract and to escape a bit. So I don't really think it was that odd. We didn't follow politics. Most of us didn't have TVs. So, we didn't know what was going on the news and stuff like that. So Dungeons and Dragons. And again, I thought the same thing, right? So when my friend said that, I didn't think about Dungeons and Dragons. I thought of, being somewhere safe, secure, warm, being able to eat, a nice meal and be around people that were loving and caring. That was my escape right there. So when I went there the first day, of course, I read the rule books, and me being who I was back then, I wanted to troll them a bit. So I role played the exact, I role played the exact opposite of who I was in life. And I rolled a paladin named Garvey. And I don't know if you know D&D too well, but paladins are the goody-goodies of Dungeons and Dragons, lay the cape down across a puddle for people to walk across, hold the door open, sacrificing for the benefit of others and being in other people's service. So I role-played a paladin aptly named Garvey. And,
chaotic good?
Yeah. No, lawful good. You had to be lawful good with the advanced Dungeons and Dragons set that was available back
Gotcha.
then. So you had to be lawful good. So the first couple sessions, I didn't really get it. I enjoyed being around the people. I enjoyed the narrative. The dungeon master was extremely articulate, really good at role playing the various non-player characters. But then something hit. And I'll never forget the moment that it actually changed something in me. So we had adventured in a village. We had did some questing. And then later on in the campaign, we ended up going back to the village. And I went into the tavern, as you do, to collect information about your next quest, to see what's going on, to meet the NPCs, blah, blah, blah. And when I walked in, it was like that old TV show Cheers, where everybody knows your name. And the guy Norm walks in and everybody raised their glass and says, Norm! Well, the dungeon master role played that exact scenario when I walked in.
That's fantastic.
And it was Garvey, and they all bought me a pint. And something just felt good about that. Like walking into a room and having what you walk in a room and there's smiles on people's faces. They want you to be there. And from that point on, I started taking particular attention to the NPC interactions. And I noticed the more I did for others, whether it was the people in my party, whether it was NPCs, the better it made me feel. So it got to a point where I started thinking about myself in my everyday interactions outside of that. And I thought to myself, what if instead of a frown and a push for every single person that came across my path, what if I had a smile and a handshake? What if I held doors open for people? What if I did these little things? And I started doing it. Lo and behold, my life improved dramatically. And I looked forward to trying to find little simple acts of kindness and sacrifice to complete strangers, to friends, to anybody. And I found that the less I thought about myself in life, the better my life became. The more I thought about being surrounded by people that were felt safe, felt happy, felt secure, felt kindness and love, the better my life became. So obviously, to make a long story short, this is why I don't really like to be called Mark, because it reminds me a little bit about how I grew up, and maybe me not being such a nice person. And I like to be called Garvey because it reminds me every day that I can indeed be a better person, and that being in the service of others is the finest form of living that you could ever find. So every time I hear Garvey, it reminds me that I can be better today than I was yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever shared that story with me. I don't think I think we've talked, you and I have had so many conversations, but I don't think you've ever shared that story with me. And maybe I think we talked about it, but you might have said you weren't right. I don't remember, but I would have remembered that if you had shared that with me in that way.
So it taught me two things, right? It taught me one, again, being in the service of others, showing love and being there for others is the finest form of living. But it also taught me the power of narrative. And that really changed the second thing in my life, narrative, right? And it taught me to good stories go a long way in life. And if you could say something simple, but you could tell it in a story, it really makes an impact on people. And that the power of narrative actually is the second thing that really changed my life and my direction in life, and why I'm sitting here right now, talking to you.
Well, and I really, the thing that I get from what you're saying, and this is going to be, I think, for only a few people. And I spent my entire summer of 1986 on Long Island, New York. My family was going through a bit of an issue at that time. And so my sister and I were living with my grandparents out in Garden City. Now, Garden City might as well be a million miles away from Brooklyn. My grandmother actually grew up in Flatbush, so I know of it. Obviously, my dad talks about my great grandfather, who was a huge Brooklyn Dodgers fan, which was where the Brooklyn Dodgers played, but of course they left in 1957.
Mm-hmm.
But to talk, when you say, I can picture in my mind exactly what you are talking about because I drove through, but I never stopped. We never stopped.
You didn't want to back then.
You didn't. Seriously. And I remember, you know, you talk about the graffiti on the trains. That was something I know that was when they developed the technology, the MTA trains that were graffiti resistant, where they could just wash them and the graffiti would come off. I mean, you want to see what Brooklyn looked like, and tell me if I'm right about this, Garvey. Go on YouTube and look up the Welcome Back Kotter opening sequence. That was Brooklyn in 1980. I know the show was in the 70s, but it might as well have been Brooklyn in 1986 as well too. I mean, that was it. And so at 15 years old, you're on your own. What was school like for you at that time?
It was a bit difficult. So I bounced around to different places, and I was in survival mode, but I still did get to graduate high school. Not under the best circumstances, not in the best of conditions, but I did graduate. So I still knew even back then that, you know, a structure in life, which was school to me back then, was really important. So I did whatever I could to make sure that, you know, I was in school and graduated. I think I graduated at the end of 1986, early. Okay. Yeah, something like that.
Well, so so you've had this, first of all, to graduate high school, given everything that you went through is a testament to, even if you were a jerk or, you know, rude to people or anything, it's still a testament to your ethic that is internal and core to you. So I congratulate you for doing it, because I've worked with plenty of students who do come from very difficult situations who don't make it. So I really commend you for being able to find the fortitude to complete your education at the high school level, and to have acceptance in a community such as the Jamaican Caribbean community in Flatbush, in Brooklyn, and to the point where they are accepting you, they're giving you a nickname, they're inviting you over to the home. You're basically family at this point. What then took you from, okay, Dungeons and Dragons, and you're finding your place, you're finding your voice, the narrative is important. You figure out that you need to live this almost Paladin-like lifestyle, if you will. What then took you to your next step? Because I know there were a few years in there. You didn't go right into college. I mean, you went to work for, did you go right to work for UPS at that point?
Yep. The power of the narrative secured me a job at United Parcel Service as a full-time driver when I was 21 years old. Very fortunate. So I went to, I was looking for any work, right? Anything to get my hands on. And I went to the UPS main headquarter building to apply for a Christmas contractor job where you help the drivers deliver packages. So I walk in the headquarters, and there is a security guard there checking, you know, what are you doing here? Blah, 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 blah. So I told him, oh, I'm here for, you know, a job. Says, oh, you know, we're not taking applications till 1 o'clock. You know, come back then. So I said, okay. So I come back at 1 o'clock. He lets me in. I'm sitting in the waiting room. The manager comes out and says, looks at me and says, oh, you know, who are you? What are you doing here? I said, oh, you know, this is who I am. I'm here for the part-time job to help drivers. And the manager's like, oh, we're not hiring for that today. You know, you'll have to come back, keep an eye out for when we post it. So I didn't know what to say. So I was like, oh, okay. You know, I tried. So I was leaving. As I was leaving, I grabbed the security guard, who was very kind. And I said, you know, I recognize your accent. You know, where are you from? So the guy says he's from Guyana. And I said, oh, I have some friends there from Guyana, and they say you guys got snakes that are like 25 feet long and they eat like sheep and blah, 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 blah. I said, is that really true? He's like, yeah, they're called anacondas and blah, 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 blah. So we started talking for about a half hour. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, really nice to meet you. Thank you for letting me in, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, that was quick. What happened? I said, well, I was here for a job interview, but they said they're not hiring. He said, oh, that's my mistake. Today is driver referral only interviews for full-time drivers. I said, oh, my mistake, sorry for wasting your time. He says, no, what's your name? So I told him my name. He says, oh, I don't know why, but your name's right here on the list. And I saw him write the name on the list. So I was like, no, you can't do that. He says, come back in an hour and I'll let you back in. So I come back in an hour. He lets me in. I go into this huge auditorium. I fill out the application, of which I was able to put a phone number and an address of a girlfriend that I was staying with at the time. And her family had seen past my Brooklyn exterior and knew I was trying to be a better person. So they allowed me to use their phone number and address on job applications, which was very kind of them. Mm-hmm. So I came in and I'm the only one in the auditorium. So a little red-haired guy comes out like 15 minutes later, grabs the application, and he puts this huge show on. He takes the application. Now, meanwhile, I'm in this huge auditorium. It should have been jam-packed. I was the only one there. And he makes this whole show of like looking around at everybody and saying, Mark, is Mark here? Mark. Meanwhile, I'm the only one in the audience, so I already liked him, right? He put a smile on my face. So I kind of raised my hand. I'm like, hi. So it's like, come on over. So we go over to his desk, and the first thing I noticed on his desk was J.R.R. Tolkien's The Two Towers from The Lord of the Rings, right?
Sure.
So of course it was a book I had read since I got into this whole fantasy subgenre. I had a lot of time on my hands. So I immediately started talking about the book and what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, blah, 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 blah. We're talking for like a half hour. And he lost track of time. Finally, he's like, oh, I should probably get on to the interview. And I won't go into all the little details. There's a lot of like little strange things, circumstances that happened that allowed me to get this extremely difficult union, right? It was Teamsters 804 union job, right? And there's a whole story between the interview process, because I didn't have the proper driver's license that you needed to be a full-time driver. There's a whole nother story in that, but ended up I got the job. Worked there for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then at 31, I had a little bit of money. This is going to sound really odd. I don't even know if I should say it, but I was able to quit that job because I pioneered something called day trading. So there's actually a New York Times article on me written in 1998. But anyway, yeah, I came up with my own algorithm. I used a machine called QuoteTrek, which was brand new technology that gave you real-time stock quotes, bid offers, volume, volatility, so on and so forth. And it was right after E-Trade came out, where it's like $10 trades, and you don't talk to a broker, you just push button on a phone. So I started doing it in 1996, and of course I was a tech guy, and a gamer, so. I made a little bit of money on that, and invested in. Hold
on. How do you go from we got to fill in some gaps here in your story, my friend. UPS. First of all, UPS is obviously. I think everybody in the United States knows what UPS, maybe in the world, but a UPS job is a solid job. I mean, that is a job that's not a company going out of business anytime soon. That is. That job, because my father used to work for UPS as well, and he wasn't a driver, but they put him on a truck at Christmas time because yes, yep. He was an exec, but they still put their execs on trucks and they sent him out to Los Angeles to deliver packages. But so how do you what's the impetus that gets you from UPS solid job, union job? So everything's covered to I'm going to start figuring out day trading. Like where did that switch start to come in?
It comes from a little bit of my older self, which was summed up in 2 words: test me. Like, I don't like people trying to test me. So what happened was, earlier on my UPS career, I was hanging out on my lunch hour and after work with all the freight drivers, all the other delivery people, the people that ran the elevators, so on and so forth. But I delivered the courts in downtown Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And a little bit later on, one of the lawyers that went to court all the time took a shine to me, right? Again, narrative, right? Always telling stories, always trying to make somebody smile, so on and so forth. And they invited me to lunch at Forlinis on Baxter Street, which is quite famous in and of itself. So I went out to lunch, and lo and behold, it's a bunch of lawyers and judges. So I noticed that they weren't talking about spinning wheels and girls and like kind of like just everyday street stuff. They were always talking about how their money's making money for them. So I just wanted to contribute, and they started inviting me out once or twice a week for lunch. And of course, I want to be a contributor. I want to, have some kind of knowledge to either make jokes or just to contribute to the conversation. So I asked 2 brothers on my route in Soho, hey, what's this whole thing with investing and blah, 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 blah. And I caught them give each other the side eye. And I interpreted it as, who's this UPS blue collar worker asking us business owners, about something that he should have, no knowledge of, no less ask us for advice on. And that what they told me was, don't worry about it. You'll if you get involved, you'll just lose all your money. So immediately my old Brooklyn self came in and said, oh, word, test me. So right after work, and I was working 12, 13 hours a day. Overtime was something beautiful at UPS, time and a half. It was like, at the time in the 90s, I was making on overtime $37 an hour, which is
for the 90s, like, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Right? But I went on the way home and I went to a Barnes & Noble's and I bought like a dummy's guide to the stock market. And I read it that day and the next day. And then I started buying like the Investor Business Daily. I started keeping track of stocks. And for the life of me, I did this for like 5 months. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out how people were making money because, and again, I was a gamer. So I was following tech stocks, obviously. I couldn't understand how people were making money because I'd look at Lucent Technologies or I'd look at Dell and it'd be at like $70 one day, $70.01 the next day, $69.99 the next day, so on and so forth. And for the life of me, I just couldn't figure out how, people were making so much money in the stock market. So I was about to say, okay, I know what I'm talking about. I get the general gist of it. At least I could talk about it. Right before I was about to give up on like researching and even get involved in it, there was an article in the Investor Business Daily for a new technology, which was like a little like phone-sized device called Quotrek, Quotrek. And it promised real-time stock quotes, blah, 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 blah. So I said, all right, I can't give it an honest Brooklyn swing at it without actually trying. It was quite expensive, the monthly fee. But I said, I have to do it just so maybe I'll find something that will, show that I actually did my homework when I'm having lunch with all these really great people.
Sure.
So I ordered it, came in, and I'm watching it. And now all of a sudden, I'm seeing these crazy swings, like the same Lucent Technology stock would start at, let's say, 70, go down to 68, up to 72, down to 68, up to 72. And then like right before close, it would like level out at approximately where it started. So I'm like, this is strange. Like, why is this happening? So then another feature is you could see volume. You could see how many shares are being traded. You could also show bids and offers, how many people are buying, how many people are selling. So as I'm watching these couple, and I had like 7 or 8 gold standard stocks that I knew the companies and I knew they weren't going anywhere. I'm watching and I started saying, oh, there's a correlation between volume first, and then you can see when the bids and offers are swinging. So I'm thinking to myself, why isn't somebody buying, 10 shares of, a stock or 100 shares of a stock and selling it when it goes up $1, and you make $100 on a phone call, which was a lot of money to me, right? So I was like, this is really interesting. And the more I was watching, the more I was like, this is consistent. Why is nobody doing this? Obviously because the technology was brand new to see real time like that. So the first stock I ever bought was, and I can never really forget this because it was the first strike at UPS in UPS history. So I was on the picket line in downtown Manhattan, and I'm like, all right, I'm probably gonna lose my job. I've got a little money saved. I'm going in. So I bought the only stock that I could buy a little over 100 shares with my total life savings. And that was Apple at like $12 a share.
Oh my goodness.
So I ran from the picket line at like 9:30 in the morning. And I bought Apple at a small little dip. It was like, instead of $12.50, it was like $12.25 or something like that. I said, all right, I'm going in. I push all the buttons on the phone from E-Trade. And I bought 125 or 150 shares of Apple. And I run back to the picket line. Now I'm like, all right, it's literally do or die. I don't know if I'm going to have a job tomorrow. I just put my entire life savings into something I'm guessing about. And by the time I got back to cross the street and went to the picket line, I look at my quote trek and I turn it off and I turn it back on. I'm like, what's going on? I look and Apple's at like $25 a share.
Oh my God.
So I dropped what I was doing, ran across. By the time I could sell the stock, it was at 27. It ends up that's the day that Microsoft put $250 million into Apple to avoid the anti-monopoly lawsuit the US government had done against Microsoft.
So we're talking like 1996, 95?
1996, 1997. I'm not sure exactly when I decided to buy my first stock. I started researching, like I said, maybe late 1996.
Wow.
And from that one, and now mind you, right, again, do or die, right? Mind you, at the time, you can margin 100% of what your account was worth. So if you had $100, you could buy $200 worth of stock. If you had 200, you could buy 400. I went all in, right? So I was doing this 10, 12 times a day, every single day. It became like a game to me where whatever I had, I would double it and buy a stock based on volume. And once I saw there was a lot of volume and things were moving really fast, I could just play the bid and offer game and get in and get my $1. So it got to the point where I was buying thousands of shares of stock, getting my $1 VIG, and selling it. And I was very structured as well. I when I would buy, I would automatically set a limit and a limit stop order, which means if you buy it at 70, you can set a limit at 71. You don't have to call. The computer automatically sells your stock. And the limit stop is if it goes to 69, I'll lose $1, but it's automatically sold. So every time I would buy a stock, I would set a limit and a limit stop, and I'd walk away and do my job. So yeah, I told the judges what I was doing and the lawyers what I was doing. They're like, what the hell are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. You're going to lose all your money. 6 months later, they're constantly calling me, asking me what I'm getting into that day. Right. So it got to the point where the Wall Street Journal wanted to do an article on me. But then the New York Times came in and swooped them. So the New York Times sent a photographer out, and there's a color. I believe I was one of the first color pictures on the cover of the Sunday New York Times. And they did a huge article, like a 3-page article on, there wasn't even a term for it. There wasn't even day trading. There wasn't even a term for it back then, which was in 1998 that they did that article. And then, the first rule of business is if nobody's talking about it, go in hard. If everybody's talking about it, get out as quick as you can, right? So I took all my money out of the stock market and I put it into privately owned UPS stock. And lo and behold, a month later, 1999 was the dot-com bubble bursting, and everything went down to like 5% of what its value was. And then UPS says, okay, nobody's allowed to buy UPS stock anymore. You used to be able to take a payroll deduction and buy a little bit of stock each week, or you could put your own money in and buy private stock. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I rolled the dice. I tried. At least I had the experience. At least I have another story I could tell my friends, right? 2 weeks later, they announced they're going public. There's a 2-for-1 stock split. It hits the market at like $82 a share, which is kind of crazy. And I went to my boss. I was like, look, Lou, I've been working for almost 10 years now, work 12 hours every single day. If you ever have a problem, I call you before I come in and I cover for work. But I'm tired of working. I love the job. I love the people on my route. It was a very social experience, right? Really loved doing my job. But I don't want to work 12 hours anymore. I want to see, what else is out there. So and I didn't give him a problem. I gave him a solution. According to union regulations, if you take work off the beginning of your truck or at the end of your route, then that's acceptable. They'll make a new route. And he looked at me and says, go do your job. I said, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm tired. Union regulations don't require me to work more than 10 hours a day. He said, you know what you were up for when you signed for that route. Go do your effing job.
Oh, boy.
I said, Lou, did you just curse me? He said, you know what I mean? Get the F out of here. So I dangled the keys. I said, you know what, Lou? Threw the keys on his desk. You go do my job. So
oh my gosh.
I left and I took a year off. I went full degen. So at the time, it was Ultima Online into Dark Age of Camelot. That was my jam.
Wait. Before we get into your degen, wait. We got to stop before you get into your degen phase, because I want to let people know too that when that UPS stock went public, because again, there's a lot of kids on here who weren't even born who are listening to this. Yeah, but there were a lot of truck drivers, brownies, who became millionaires overnight because of this. Yeah. This for a lot of those guys, and for people, women and men, that was, it was literally overnight millionaires who were just, as you said, they're driving trucks. Not
rank and file union Teamsters. Yep.
But think about this, Garvey, because we got to back up for just a second. You 10, 15 years before are trying to figure out, where are you going to sleep? Where are you going to live? You're rubbing shoulders with lawyers and judges. You are suddenly figuring out that stock trading isn't just for the wealthy. It can be for anybody who educates themselves, reads about it, finds the inefficiencies in the system, or really learns about what's going on. And not only that, but you're taking victories $1 at a time, not hundreds of dollars at a time or thousands of dollars at a time that people think it has to be.
Wins or losses, $1. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, that in of itself. See, this is why I love talking to you, because and let's also think about this. You now know how to get around Manhattan probably better than anybody at this point. I mean, it's like, hey, I got to get from this side of town to this side of the town. And you're not doing it with GPS, because there was no GPS back then. You are doing it from, you have a route and you know how to stop. And people have to understand too, when you stop a truck in New York City, some of those lanes are 2-lane roads with parking on each side. You're blocking traffic. So you have like 10, 15 seconds. You got to get that package in that door. Hopefully there's a doorman there to answer the door for you when you come up, because sometimes there isn't. Yeah, you're dude, this story's fascinating.
It seemed really simple to me, right? It was a very simple algorithm, right? I couldn't understand why anybody else did not see this. Obviously, the institutional players knew how to work the system like that, but that one machine Quotrek was really like a gateway into a world that nobody had access to prior to that. And I was just probably one of the first people to actually get their hands on it. and take a deep delve and actually figure out what actually caused these stock movements.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now
it didn't
you're
hurt that I was in the .com bubble, right? It probably didn't hurt at all.
Well, let's talk about your bohemian phase now. So you have left the UPS company. You are, I assume, are you full-time trading right now, or you just have your UPS stock and you're willing?
Nope. So we'll take another step back. Once I got a little bit of money from working, in '94, I got into playing Magic the Gathering because obviously it was too hard to be consistent with Dungeons and Dragons, right? So I got into Magic the Gathering, Friday Night Magic, blah, 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 blah. And I ended up for the better part of 3 years, on every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I would compete in Magic the Gathering tournaments. So I did competitive Magic the Gathering for a good 3 years, right up until 1996, early 1997, when a brand new type of video game came out, MMORPGs, right? Mm. So I got into Ultima Online. And I just got sucked into the role-playing experience of this huge open world sandbox, anything goes kind of game, which was really interesting. So this goes to my gaming background. Before that, there was Bard's Tale, there was Zork, which was the text-based game. And that was the evolution of gaming for me, right? D&D into Zork, into Bard's Tale, into Pools of Radiance, Dungeons and Dragons Pools of Radiance on the Commodore 64, into the first real MMORPG, which was Ultima Online. So that's a little bit I was a very busy young person, right? I had a lot of energy, and I always liked to do something different. I always credit D&D for teaching me the power of narrative and being a better person. I credit Magic the Gathering for teaching me basic things like minimizing RNG in situations, which is very valuable for business, right? And you minimize RNG by making sure you could have between 1 and 4 cards in a deck.
RNG is what?
Oh, random number generator.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like taking the gamble out of gambling, or minimizing the gambling, and instead of having a 50-50 chance, you find ways to get a 57-43% chance, which is always better than a 50-50, right? Magic the Gathering teaches you that. And then I think MMORPGs really teach you min-maxing, how to get the most, how to be efficient, right? How to have a purpose and working really hard towards long-term goals, but having these small wins, these small moments of earned dopamine hits that help you get along and appreciate the journey as well as the destination. So there's all these things that gaming taught me in life that made me appreciate it, but also understand how it helps, business acumen, personal growth, experiences, walking a mile in other people's shoes, things of this nature. And that's when I really, really knew that there was something amazing about gaming, right? So, I worked a lot with the developers of the games I was playing, in particular, Dark Age of Camelot. That's really the beginnings of what got me into gaming, what the importance was, how I was involved. So at 31, after all is said and done, after my year of full-on degen mode, right, I decided to do something that I never got the chance to do, which was invest in myself. And I always dreamed of going to college. So 31 is when I started my college career.
Wow.
Yeah. Went to school for 5 years at CUNY, City University of New York. I majored in, this is going to sound odd, right? History, political science, and philosophy.
It does. To me, it doesn't sound odd because, as I've soon discovered recently, philosophy majors, I know philosophy gets, it's just a soft science or whatever. No, philosophy majors, those are the people who know how to talk to people. Those are the people who know how to, I won't say manipulate, but they find the reason, the thing that they're the ones who can talk best. They're the ones who, when you talk about a CEO or somebody running a company, the philosophy major, I would bet that if they have an MBA, they probably have a philosophy BA at some point.
I love it. So, the reason why I was going to go for history and political science, but I went for a philosophy 101 class, and a guy younger than me, now mind you, I didn't go to college till I was like 32, right? 31, 32. A young guy comes in and says, welcome to philosophy 101. I will not be teaching you a thing. Dramatic pause. But I will enable you to ask better questions. Sign me up. And I decided to do a philosophy class every single semester. And Simon Sinek, Sinek, really sums up what you had just mentioned. The why is
that's what I was channeling, actually. When you said that, I was thinking Simon Sinek right there.
Yep, the golden circle, why in the middle, how, what. Yeah, always start with the why. And that goes back to power narrative, being a philosophy major, just trying to understand what makes me work, knowing myself as well as I could. Simon Sinek, How Great Leaders Inspire, is one of the TED Talks that I used to ask the student leaders that I worked with all over the world to watch. And of course, along with the book, The Alchemist. So those were my two things that I would ask.
Paulo.
Yeah, Paulo. Cuelo, I think it is.
Those of you who are watching me on the stream, I'm looking because I have my bookshelf right here, and I have Simon Sinek's book "Leaders Eat Last" sitting right here, and my copy of The Alchemist is somewhere on here too. See, great minds, my friend.
Yeah, and those are the two things that I asked from student leaders for me to know that they were serious. And I could spend extra time with him or her, as a student leader. And if they just did those two things, that I would invest as much time as I could. And it's worked to great effect, I think, so far. Two simple things. But yeah, that's my college career.
Well, and let's I gotta say something about The Alchemist. And I think it's a book that is not nearly read enough. I think it was an Oprah book for a while, and that it got a big pop. But that book to me is a book that should be read by high school freshmen. I mean, I think that's probably the proper time.
CEOs, if they didn't read it.
Yeah. High school freshmen should read it. Everybody should read that book. It is because, and I'm not going to give the story away, but when you think, sometimes it's the journey, even though what you need is right there, it's the journey.
Yep.
And as we're talking about you,
as the destinations.
As we're talking about you here, I mean, I think this is why this story is your story resonates so much with me is because this is about the journey, and your every part when in the story of The Alchemist, when you think there's a stop or something, it's not a stop. It's not an end. It's
appreciate it and keep going. So, the college stuff is actually what leads me to what we started our conversation with is, why am I such a fan? Why am I such a supporter of education and students? It was my dream after being a laborer, and I said, okay, what do I want to dedicate my life that I could be of service to others in? And I wanted to be an educator, right? So, but when I went to school, I got so frustrated because, CUNYs, you can either do 2 years or 4 years. You can get your associates or your bachelor's, right? Mm-hmm. So, throughout New York City, it was a lot of the students were just going for the associate degree so they could be a fireman, a garbage person, a police officer. Those are requirements. You need to have associate degree. So I would get really frustrated because I would do all the required reading. I would actually do extra, right? Because I would see a tangent and I would go chase it down because I wanted to know. I would do all the required reading. I would participate in class, blah, blah, blah. But students were so disrespectful to the the educators, they were, and when I say disrespectful, I don't mean like cursing at them or doing, but they weren't paying attention. They didn't do the reading. They didn't do the homework. You know, they were happy just getting by with a, you know, a C or whatever the case may be, just to pass. And, you know, I came in prepared for conversations. And I wanted to show the educators, you know, respect and appreciation. But a lot of these teachers really looked beaten, right? Looked down, and it was like, okay, you know, this is just a job for me. I'm not really changing anybody's lives. Nobody's paying attention to me, so on and so forth. And I went to one of my teachers, a history teacher on Chinese history. I said, you know, how do you do this every day? Obviously, it was during the office hours, which was never utilized. I said, how do you do this every day? I see the students, they talk in the back of the classroom, they come in late, they don't do the reading, there's no conversations, they don't have answers to your questions. So how do you keep doing this? He said, well, you know, every semester or every year you find one student like you that actually comes prepared and actually contributes to my understanding of the subject matter. Vroom, love it.
I live on a busy street and one of my windows is open. I apologize.
Yeah. And that's when I grew to respect what educators did, but I chose not to go into the education route at that time. Mm-hmm. It was frustrating.
Well, but Garvey, you know, you have been a mentor, and I mean, a mentor to so many people in this industry. I look out when I go talk to people at conferences, or I run into somebody and your name comes up, because a lot of times it does come up. It is always with reverence. It is always with appreciation. What do we need to do right now to, I guess, better serve? Because again, you're in a different role now. We'll talk about AcadArena in just a little bit, but you were with Twitch, and Twitch Student was something that I know impacted a lot of college kids. And it wasn't just the work that you were doing. I mean, it was the experience. It was, again, the respect. It was it wasn't kids who you were just giving it to, but they had to earn your mentorship in a lot of ways. Kind of what you were just talking about right now, where you wanted to impress upon your teachers that you took seriously what it was they were teaching. How are we going to best serve students right now, especially post-pandemic? Because I think student needs have changed dramatically since the pandemic. I know I go to college campuses, and one of my own children is a freshman in college right now, and I've talked with some of those kids. Those kids are different than the college kids I came across 2-3 years ago. So what can we do to best serve students right now as we're moving forward?
You know, I think in my experiences now working in gaming, esports, content creation in the academic space since 2011 now, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's a two-way street, right? I know teachers might not feel seen and might not feel appreciated and respected by a lot of students. God's honest truth, though, young people are feeling very much the same, right? Mm-hmm. They're not feeling seen. They're not feeling heard. They're not feeling appreciated and respected for their passions and the things that they want to do in life. And I've noticed a big shift, right? The support of passions, using their passions to teach in these, and I sound like a robot when I say this a lot, but valuable and transferable skills. Esports, gaming, and content creation, it's working for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It's making students feel seen. It's giving them a sense of identity and belonging that was maybe missing in their life. It's giving them a really engaging way to learn really valuable life lessons, soft skills, with the addition of the hard skills that's inherent in digital media. And I talk about this a lot, right? Esports, gaming, content creation as a vehicle to teach valuable and transferable emerging media skills. That's been my gold standard go-to for as long as I can remember. And it becomes a two-way street, right? Now the students are feeling loved, appreciated. They have a community. Even if you're not a gamer, it's a fun community to be a part of.
God, yes.
It's a very inclusive um, um, going for the students, right? You don't have to be, 6'3" and jump 5 feet in the air to throw a ball through a hoop. You don't need to be 280 pounds and be able to like knock people over like bowling pins to like be the star on your campus. Young women, young men, disabled people can find a home in the gaming community, can find value and be appreciated and loved, and represent their community, represent their friends, represent their school, sometimes represent their city, sometimes represent their state, sometimes represent their country. That's what esports and gaming is to me, right? It's a community, it's a sense of belonging, it's identity, it's feeling seen, it's having your voice heard, it's being part of something greater and contributing all you can to being a better person in the pursuit of a goal. On the flip side, the educators that support these students are now the rock stars of campuses. I'm sure when you started your programs, the students adored you. They looked up to you. Your time was really appreciated. You felt valued, loved, and respected. And in turn, it made you work harder for the students, right? Being in the service of them.
Absolutely.
So this is what I discovered in my foray into esports gaming and content creation. Over a decade, 12 years ago. And I'm just running now to chase help educators and students see each other, appreciate each other, walk away with something valuable that, yes, they can go out and create YouTube videos or TikTok videos, but the skills that they're learning, right? It's all emerging media, right? The marketing skills, the business skills, the narrative skills, all these skills you can apply to what you really love, or you can take them and you go to Coca-Cola, you can go to Ford Motor Company, right? You can go to these companies that are a little bit behind on the times and help them come up to speed, right? With where young people are, and what good business looks like in emerging media. So that's, I think, what really got me hook, line, and sinker, and dedicate really my life now to helping educators and students come together with a handshake, appreciate each other, respect each other, and let each person walk away a little bit better than they were yesterday. Whether that's in hard skills, whether that's in soft skills, whether that's respect and love and appreciation for others and their contributions in some little way, right? It's the journey, not the destination. You don't need to be, faker tomorrow. You could take these little steps to, in 10 years, be faker. And you know what? You'll notice when you get to be faker, that's just another component of the journey to where you're going.
Before we got started, I said, do you really want to talk about Twitch Student?
Sure.
What's interesting as we were having this conversation, as you just went through this, I came to the realization that, and again, it's part of what you just said. Twitch Student, it was never Twitch Student. Twitch Student was you. It was, and Kevin. I mean, you and Kevin together. And I know you brought Kevin on as you want to talk about mentorship. I mean, those of us who know Kevin Wong, I mean, the mentorship comes through every day with that young man, and he's impressive. But, I know that when we chatted about, as you were getting ready to exit from Twitch and Twitch Student, there was a mourning period. I could tell there was a mourning period, but now as I'm listening to you talk, I hope you don't mourn Twitch Student, because it was never about that. It was about what you were giving people. I think that's what Twitch Student was. It was you embodied in a program with a name and a company label slapped on it. But really it was your gift back to so many people. And I hope you realize that.
Yeah, I was extremely fortunate at Twitch. I came on really early at Twitch.
It wasn't even Twitch. It was just on TV.
No. I wasn't. That's Justin TV was in the 2000s. I was living in China at the time. That's when I did a small stint in teaching business and effective communication in China, at the third best university in China. I was also in 2006. That's where I really got into esports. So I'll go into my little esports background. I'll go from gaming into esports. In 2006, early 2007, a wonderful game that was community generated came out that I fell in love with, that I went all in on while I was learning Chinese, and it was called Dota, right? So I helped all the teams in China get put together. I was organizing like wangbas, which are like wangba is like an internet cafe. I was organizing tournaments between Dota players at different wangbas in the city I lived in and then the region I lived in. And before you knew it, I was organizing it all over China. So that's really my first foray into professional organized esports, right? Because Magic Gathering was just a competitive game. And then I worked with Tencent. And in 2009, I brought League. I was playing beta League of Legends in mainland China at like 500 ping. It was crazy, but we all loved the game. So I was organizing little tournaments in mainland China with League of Legends. And it was really funny, right? Because we had 500 ping. We'd be in a Wangba and we'd get into a 5v5. And it was like, okay, everything freezes. You just jam your buttons and then sit back and wait for like to see what the actual outcome is, like 30, 40 seconds later, who actually died, who went where, blah, 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 blah. So it was kind of funny. So we used to run these comps where it was like just tanky AoE guys like Garen, Amumu, blah, 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 blah. And what we would do is my team actually really just dominated everybody because all we did was buy boots and then buy 5 Sunfire capes. And at the time in 2009, 2010, they all stacked. So we would just run around as 5 people around the map with as many Sunfire capes as we could buy. So it didn't even matter. We didn't even need to, as soon as there was more than 2 people on the screen, everything would freeze. But we know we would win because no matter the lag, the 7, 8, 9 Sunfire capes were just ticking away. So anyway, that's crazy. So I worked with Tencent a little bit after that, and helped really give them the ideas of a gaming and esports division. Came back and immediately in late 2010, immediately got into the league scene. So I was fortunate enough to be really close to like Hotshot GG, Reginald, Dignitas, all the old original pre-LCS teams. So I went to all the events around the world, blah, 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 blah. 2012, moved to Korea and worked with all the Western teams. I don't know if anybody remembers, but in 2012, like the first season of OGN Champions and the second season was Western, more experienced teams versus the brand new Korean teams. So I had a ball out there with OGN and all the players and stuff like that. Worked for a competitor, actually helped start a competitor platform to Twitch because at the time there was Own3D and Twitch were the 2 big players. Then
I remember the first one.
Yeah, Own3D. Yeah, that's where all the players were. And then there was some kind of difficulty with Own3D where I guess the business model wasn't really good. I mean, I actually know, but I don't want to talk about it. But a lot of the people that were creating content wasn't making money. They weren't getting paid. So that was the really big window for Twitch to blow up at the time. And I knew all the Twitch guys. I went to the first ever Twitch after party at New York Comic Con in I think it was late 2010 or early 2011, maybe 2011. I forget. But yeah. So I got talked into by the players because Own3D dropped out and Twitch was the only name in the game. So the players asked me to work with a Korean company to create a competitor, which was Azubu TV.
Oh, okay.
Azubu, yeah. So I brought Azubu to North America and Europe and South America and Latin America. That's when. And it's a funny story. I told Kevin Lynn that
the journey on this again. Your background, it's none of this should happen.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like if I put all these things up and said, okay, which of these things has Garvey done? And they don't, and all I'd say is he was at 15 years old, living on his own. Nobody could say, oh, he did this. They would, there is no way that they would ever say he did all of those things.
I know. It's like, I hear that a lot. And a lot of the players back in the day really were skeptical as well. But, if you do enough digging, there's
I believe you.
Yeah.
But I'm saying is the common person who doesn't know you would say there's no way.
I've had a crazy life. I'm very appreciative. But I follow my instincts. I really believe in myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I could do anything, but just given enough time to learn the mechanics of things. And again, goes back to just traditional gaming, right? Learning the mechanics of things, having a plan, and then being patient enough to take the steps to get to where you want to go with it. I credit that to gaming, right? I credit that to Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, Ultima Online. Like, there's nothing in the world I can't do. There's nothing in the world you can't do. And not you, James, right? The capital Y. If you just do the diligence, do the research, learn the mechanics, see what people are doing so you can see what people aren't doing. And go, and then believe in yourself to go in 100%. There's no 99% with me. I'm either all in or I'm not in at all. That's it.
It's funny though. I was at an event a few weeks ago and I heard somebody tell an audience mainly of young Black and Hispanic kids, oh, going out and getting money is an easy thing if you have an idea. Just go ask your mom or your grandmother for $25,000 here or there. And I'm like, that isn't I think what needs to be celebrated in your message compared to that, because somebody say, oh, those are the same message. They're not the same message, because you have respect for the position that a lot of those kids are in because you've lived it. And it is that first dollar. It is that it isn't just the go out and want it. It's the respect of knowing that for some kids, that's all they can do that day is that one or two things. So it's like, focus on those one or two. Don't worry about the million other things that you have to do. Focus on the one or the two things that you can get done that day. Am I hearing you right when I say that?
Yeah. So, and there's a methodology to it as well, which I kind of specialize in. So, and we'll get into it with my journey from Azubu to Twitch. So, when I left Azubu, Twitch reached out to me because I told Twitch early on that, hey, I love you guys. I can't work for you, but because the players really want us to have some kind of like options in the industry. And they thought I was full of shit. So they kind of got angry at me. They thought, because the game was Own3D and Twitch, all they would do is look at who was on the other platform and try and poach them. So I said, I'm not going to do none of that, right? I'm going to do my own thing, right? And they didn't believe it because they didn't understand anything but this taking from each other kind of business model, which is zero sum, right? I'm not a big fan of zero sum economics. All I did was I knew the esports space, I knew the gaming space. I had friends all over the world now, from League of Legends and Dota, right? In every region in the world, I had friends. I said, look, why would I do that? So what I did is I focused with Azubu. I focused on Brazil, Latin America, some Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe, places that Twitch just simply wasn't there. Right. So I didn't focus anything on North America besides the couple teams like CLG. That was part of the reason why I took the job at Azubu. Right. So I did that for like a year and a half, 2 years before I didn't like the investors. I didn't like their business model. I didn't like their intentions. So I quit. And Kevin Lynn, God bless him, calls me up and says, hey, Garv, what you doing? I'm like, well, not much of anything right now. He says, you want to have dinner tomorrow? I'm like, oh, at the time I was living in LA. I said, oh shit, you're in LA, excuse my French. Oh snap, you're in, you're in LA? He says, no, but I can be. I said, oh, yeah, let's do it. So we flew into LA. We had a nice personal conversation, and I love him with all my heart. I really admired him from 2010 when I first met him. I said, Garv, you were a man of your word. And at the time when I stopped Azubu, a lot of people don't know this, but within the first 6 months of Azubu starting, we had 40% of Twitch's traffic in 6 months. And it was traffic that nobody had ever seen, coming from places nobody had even thought of before, right? So it was really organic, simply doing what they weren't doing. He says, you were a man of your word. You grew that platform to heights we couldn't believe. And, take a step back. Remember, YouTube Live only has I think 11% of the market now, right? Mm-hmm. So to think about this no-name company coming out and get 40% of Twitch's traffic at the time was just unheard of, right?
Wow.
So I said, you're a man of your word. You didn't poach any of our players. You simply, you did exactly what you said. You saw what we were doing, and you saw what we weren't doing. And you did what we weren't doing in places we weren't there yet. So would you come on and do it for Twitch? So I liked Kevin. I researched, went through the mechanics of Twitch. I talked to a lot of people. I accepted the job. So for the first year, I did international expansion, right? I basically went and just called all my friends in all the other countries. I was like, okay, I left the Zubu. It's kind of shady. I'm at Twitch now. And they were like, oh, great. We'll make accounts now. I said, no. You can't make it so easy, right? So particularly to my friends in Brazil, right? Like Pain Gaming. I said, no. Don't you need me to come out there and spend a week with you and take you out to dinner to talk about the wonderful aspects of Twitch and why you should be a part of it? They were like, oh, yeah. I'm not too sure about it. You need to negotiate with us. Off to the races. I would go, and I would do this in every country. So the first year, I reported directly to Kevin Lynn, and he'll laugh if he sees this, right? But he'd call me up. He's like, hey, Garv, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, what are you doing? It's 3:00 in the morning. He's like, oh shit, where are you? I'm like, oh, I'm in Sao Paulo. I'm in Istanbul, Turkey. I'm in England. I'm all over. I'm in Poland. He's like, oh, call me when you wake up. So that was the beauty of Twitch, right? At the time, reporting to Kevin Lynn and Justin Wong, they had a God's gift, and their gift was that they could see potential in people and know if they could trust them or not, and then let them do their thing, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't hire smart people or talented people or people with vast networks and tell them what to do. Right. So for the first year and a half, I was really just a leaf on the wind, just picking up all my friends from around the world, bringing them onto the platform. Mm-hmm. 2015, I was basically done, right? I couldn't fly that kite anymore. I picked up all the countries I could pick up and all my friends. And that's when I was given the opportunity to create something at Twitch, something that hadn't been done before. So as you know, I was supporting Collegiate from 2011. At Azubu, I sponsored the CSL finals that was on top of the Peterson Automotive Museum. Mm-hmm. I went to all the Texas Lone Star clashes from TESPA back in 2011, 2012. Wow. Any free time I had, I was working with student clubs and stuff like that. So I really thought that I could combine the two, and I had this idea of the skills that I was learning through video games, right? The gaming for good. And it's the AcadArena, the company that I work at now. It's our really famous hashtag called Not Just Play, right? So I pitched it to Kevin Lynn. I pitched it to John Shipman, who was our executive vice president, who I was then reporting to. And they were like, do you think there's something there? I said, well, there's absolutely nothing there, but there could be. Mm-hmm. And they trusted me enough to go out, and I did a year of research, right, from late 2014 to maybe July or August of 2015. I did my due diligence. I read thousands of pages of government white papers on STEM enrollment, STEM attrition. I went to a lot of schools, as you know. I worked with Kurt, right? The first ever
Kurt Melcher.
Yeah, Kurt Melcher from Robert Morris University. I worked with him, and he helped me understand the varsity aspect of colleges and what Robert Morris University had done. And then I started working with UCI in 2015, and I was learning on the job as I was doing my research. I put my working backwards document in, which is a really good exercise.
Oh God, yes, that idea. Oh, I remember this. I remember you telling me about this.
I think this is really important. We should circle backwards to a working backwards document when I finish with this. But I put the working backwards document. But that was a culmination of me going to I think 7 countries, interviewing administrators, educators, students, student leaders, student clubs, tournament organizers that I was supporting, collegiate tournament organizers, which was really grassroots. And I put the business plan together for Twitch and Amazon on a student education program. And they authorized it, and I founded the program called Twitch Student, which was really just a way for me to get out to the universities and talk to educators and students to make sure they saw what I saw, this opportunity to be seen, mutually respected, mutually appreciated, while both walking away a better person than they were the day before, whether that's hard skills or soft skills or an appreciation for the other. In some small way, gaming and esports was that way that you can become that better person each and every day and show love and appreciation for others.
Well, but you also, what I'm hearing too, and let's segue this into that working backwards philosophy, because again, it comes back to philosophy. And what I hear is not just working, working backwards. It's the start with why. It's like starting with why and working backward. So when you presented this idea to me, because going the other way, working forwards, where do you want to be? Well, God, again, it's the journey. Gosh, this whole story comes back together. It's the journey. And you never know which path the journey is going to take. But if you start with where it is you want to be.
Yep.
And then, okay, what do you have to do to make
every
that
step. Yep.
So share that philosophy with everybody really quickly, because I think it is powerful and it has helped. It can be, it's applicable to everything that you do.
So I think we should probably just finish up with Twitch, because that's a little bit of a sore point for me. So things went well. I grew the Twitch student program. I worked with every single university that has a varsity scholarship esports program. And, the why of it for the business was really easy, right? All I had to do was show that there's, I think, 6,503 4U universities in America alone that serves about 24 million college students every year. This is the demographics, right? Take a step back. There's over 27,000 high schools serving another 24, 25 million students is the age bracket. What if you worked with them and helped them create programs and content creation was a part of it, and you gave them Twitch channels, and it wasn't student run, it was university run or high school run, right? That was enough of a business case for them to be able to let me do what I was doing for 7 years. I did that, right, for Twitch. And nobody ever told me what to do, where to be. I grew the program out with Kevin's help. Of course, I worked with Kevin. I think he came on in 2017. We grew the program out to 33 countries, right? Whether it was a very soft touch to support the collegiate tournament organizers, or really getting ingrained with the actual universities and high schools and working with student leaders. But in its totality, 33 countries we were being of service to, and that was beautiful. Things changed with the new leadership at Twitch. They've hired really poorly, really poorly, above people that were in the trenches that understood the platform, understood the industry, understood community, understood content creation and all the little nuances of it. And they hired these grifter corporate types above people like me, for example, that's, been there, practically from the get-go, right? Helped grow the platform, with others, right? And they just came in and just wanted to grift and in my opinion, steal ideas and take credit for it, things of this nature. And it just wasn't a place of nourishing one's soul anymore, right? Having a purpose. Everything became very transactional, which I think was like one of the aspects of why a lot of people seeing a downtick in professional esports, right? I could look back at 2016 where it really hit me. 2015 really is why I took a step away from professional esports and dedicated myself to education. People became very transactional, right? They lost the art of the narrative. Everything was, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing, come watch me on Twitch compete, this Friday at ESL 1, blah, 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 blah. Everybody lost the secret sauce of the narrative, right? Why? Why do I want to follow you? Why do I want to watch your stream? Why do I care about your team? Why do I care about your players? Why do I care about you? Why do I care about this space? Why? There was no more of this like compelling narrative, and I felt like things really started getting too transactional for me, which is great. You always need, the transactional part, but it shouldn't be first and foremost and the only component. Again, it comes back to my disdain for zero-sum capitalism, right? So that's that. I made my exit because Kevin Huang had left Twitch and left Twitch Student a couple months prior, and created a startup which was really the hopes, dreams, the embodiment of everything that Twitch wanted to be, and Twitch Student wanted to be, and couldn't be because of limitations of Amazon and Twitch, and all the hopes and dreams and loves of Tespo, which was stopped by Blizzard, all the hopes and dreams of them, all the executive board and senior leadership at Twitch are people that I've known from the collegiate space for sometimes over a decade. And it was everybody just came together with all their hopes and dreams of what could be for young people and educators and students and student leaders and the industry, right? A nice, sustainable industry that increasingly becomes more and more professional, diverse, and inclusive, whether it's by gender, region, religion, whatever the case may be, right? And that's how AcadArena was born. It's really the embodiment of everybody's hopes and dreams for a better future through investing in what we ourselves invested in for ourselves, which made us, the professionals that we are, a good education, right? And having a sense of identity and community to be a part of. And so for us to start a startup based on this idea of narrative, everyday heroes, a sense of belonging, identity, this idea of not just play, that you can be a part of a community that you'll know, love, and enjoy being a part of, but you're learning all these great soft and hard skills as well. And you're meeting people that you might be able to, not look for work with. Maybe you can create something together with and become job creators instead of good, solid employees. And that's really the idea of all the different things that we do at AcadArena.
Well, and to back up just for a second too, because I've seen your company right now is focused, I believe, in the Philippines and Brazil. Is that correct?
Brazil, Southeast Asia is our focus right now, and South Asia. So I don't know if I should say this, but we're launching in India. I've got family that I know, love, and trust there. And when I say family, it's people I've worked with for 10 years that I know, love, respect, and trust. That is really like the originators of gaming in India. They're the best partners you could ever dream of having for India. So yeah, South Asia, Southeast Asia. You know me a long time. I like to work in developing countries, right? You could do the most good there. People are the most open to ideas. The collegiate space is pretty mature in Western Europe and North America. Where can I be of the most service? Where can I make the most impact? We will be in North America, right? We'll be in Europe. We'll be in Latin America. We'll be in Africa. We'll be in the Middle East. I have people that I know, love, and trust there too. But for now, as we build the company, as we do our hiring process, as we learn the process of regionalization, localization, and how to make sure there's cultural nuances to the business plans and the strategy. We're moving a little bit slow. We've got a tech stack that we're working on as well that's going to be launched at our live event called Conquest, which is this June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. It'll be the biggest festival in Southeast Asia's history. We're going to have 100,000 people there, and it's in Manila. Yeah, 100,000 people. We do our collegiate finals there. So we work with all developers, and we do the Southeast Asia collegiate tournaments for a bunch of games. So we do our finals there, but it's a celebration of community and culture. I always say it reminds me of TwitchCon 2015, the very first one that was in San Francisco. There wasn't a lot of commercial properties there. It was just a celebration of culture, and it changed obviously immediately thereafter. But this was truly a celebration of community and culture. So we don't only have esports there. We have traditional gaming, we have tabletop areas, we have indie gaming, we have anime. We have all the Genshin Impact voice actors coming. We have a bunch of artists. We have cosplay. We have music nights. So we have some really famous people coming for like music night at night because music's a part of our culture, right? Our nerd culture. We have cosplay. We have a lot of influencers coming to meet their Filipino community that they never knew they had in Southeast Asia community. They never had, like Pokimane, Valkyrie. We have a lot of, we have Fusely coming. We have a lot of people from 100 Thieves coming. We have a lot of some of the really most impactful, well-loved and well-respected content creators coming out to meet their Filipino family and community they never knew they had. We have internet, so it's over 5 venues this year. So we have the entirety of the biggest convention center here, and we have 5 surrounding buildings. So we have the street in between them closed off. It's going to be a international food festival as well. So it's everything that we love as part of a gaming community, right? We love our everyday heroes, our champions of the campus. That's what we do with esports. But we have all the other stuff that's part, right? Because we're not an esports company. We're really like a gaming and community building company. So we want to make sure that every aspect of gaming culture and community is represented in a really authentic, organic way. So yeah, we're going to have 100,000 people from around the world come to Manila.
Well, and the reason I want to make sure people understand, because if you follow Garvey on LinkedIn or you follow AcadArena, you may say, oh, they're just building, esports centers at colleges in Manila or around the Philippines. And that's not the case. And I wanted to make sure, and everything you just said kind of, now that I say that, I hope everybody realizes that. Go back, 2 minutes and listen to what Garvey just said, because it is not that. And I love the idea of the community building aspect, because as somebody who would have dropped out of Purdue University without the marching band, which was my community, which is what I had. And it doesn't have to be gaming. Again, it was a shared experience of me with 400 people the day I showed up on campus. 400 people from a cross section of the entire university, because we had no school of music. That's what kept me at the university. Those are the people who I still keep in touch with from my college days, are those people. I don't keep in touch with anybody else outside who are not in the marching band. Not the people I played rugby with, oddly. It was the band people who I've kept in touch with out of college. And everybody, I think, hopefully gets an experience like that. And to hear you talk about it here now, about what AcadArena is doing, and again, going to where the most good can be done right now, really, I think is inspiring to hear, because right now, and it's good to say that you're not an esports company, because unfortunately, the community was hijacked, I think, especially when you said when everybody's talking about it, right? And the pandemic allowed everybody to talk about esports. And when everybody was talking about it, I mean, shoot, you see what FaZe Clan is going through right now with their, they did a huge stock thing, and, talk. I don't care too much about the professional scene. Honestly, for me, it's always been like, if you said to me, tell me some professional teams, I've been to one LCS, and it was because my company had a thing there. And it's like, but I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what led up to it, because to me, it's always been about the community. It's always been working with the students. It's always, and that's what I get to do now in my job, is still work and help to, again, build community for students and schools in unique ways. That's what I do. So to hear you talk about that, I think when people are so worried about, oh, the industry is going to collapse, it's not. Yes, the big professional teams and the companies may go away, but guess what? The demographics still say that this is where kids are playing. This is where and not just kids. AARP says the report that they just put out about 50-year-old and higher gamers, that group is only growing. And guess what? They're looking for those communities as well. They're not just looking to, play Candy Crush all day. They're looking for that as their socialization. I'm 47, going to be 48 here in August. Believe you me, when I'm in the old folks home, I better have a Wii and Wii Sport on it, because I'm going to play bowling all day on that thing. Or I'm going to have my Switch, or I'm going to have my Steam Deck or whatever. And I'm going to still play these games, and I'm still going to share those things with my kids and hopefully my grandkids. So I got to tell you, having my daughter is we went and saw a concert. I'm sure now I'm going to share a little bit. So my daughter and I went to see They Might Be Giants a few weeks ago in Indianapolis. It was our first road trip that she and I ever got to take together. And what I found out on that trip is that we have obviously a lot more in common, even though I've been divorced for well over, I forgot how many years now I've been divorced. But to hear her talk about gaming and gaming culture, I mean, she's one of the biggest Zelda fans I've ever met in my life. And now it's like it rekindled something for me too, when it comes to talking about my own kids, because that's our shared culture. That's our shared mythology. That's our shared ethos. And it doesn't matter when I'm 90 years old.
With parents. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not going to matter. We're going to share these things with our kids, just like it's amazing. And to get to do that is something I hope for everybody.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Everything's a medium, everything's a journey, everything's a vehicle, So yeah, and I know we're running a little long. I do have to get to the office soon, but for AcadArena, we do a lot of different things, but we're trying to solve for problems to improve student life, an educator's life, and also the industry, right? We're trying to improve the industry. So it seems like we do a lot of divergent things, but there's a lot of shared commonalities between them, right? So, we're not in the business of building innovation labs. You might have seen we launched the first innovation lab in the Philippines at National University Philippines, Laguna. Amazing. If you want to see on my LinkedIn, you can see pictures of it. It's amazing. But we do that because the students in the Philippines, Southeast Asia, India don't have facilities to come together and explore what this could be like there is in North America and stuff like that. And we've taken our learnings too. We're not building esports labs, right? We're trying to bring people together. We're trying to build a community, right? We want students that are studying digital media in any of its forms, whether it's business or marketing or art or whatever the case may be, to have a home along with the gamers and esports teams that are representing their college in these developer leagues that we run. We run developer leagues if the country where we launch in doesn't have one, right? Because, esports is a very important aspect of gaming. And we believe that campuses need their everyday heroes. They need their champions, right? They need that component of their community, right? But it's not the end to be all, right? We want the casual gamers to have a home as well. We want the emerging media students to have a place as well. We want anybody to have a place where they feel seen and respected and can apply themselves to their best ability, right? So that's what we do with Innovation Labs. That's why we run tournaments, but we're not tournament organizers. If we go to North America, for example, there's 8 college tournament organizers, minimum now, right?
We run 3 of them.
Yeah, right. So we're happy that's there because the students have their champions. We can focus on what we want to do, which is solving problems for the student life, their experiences, working with the industry, and working with educators. That's what we want to do. So so if there's a problem, we'll solve for it. But again, all these problems all have these shared commonalities. All the communities that work with have these shared commonalities and these shared problems that we're trying to solve for. And that's the beauty of the leadership team we have, is that we all have these little areas of expertise that we can really have this broad range but narrow focus.
Well, Garvey, I know that we've gone way over time, and I am.
You're going to do a lot of editing, my friend.
No, I'm not. This is going to be raw. I'm putting this out because I got to tell you again, there are a lot of people who care so much about you, my friend. And I think this story is something that I don't think they realize just how important your journey is. The art of this narrative that you have shared, I think I hope people who have been graced to be mentored by you in some shape or form or capacity, I hope they realize just how special that is, even more so now, because again, I love you dearly. And I love the fact you call me big brother, even though I'm younger than you. It's just because I tower over you. I'm sorry, but it makes me so much happier that we call each other brother. And, I just am so thankful that you took this time, and we'll do another episode where we can talk more about your process about working backwards. Cause I think if we got into that, you're going to be really late to the office.
We could do a TLDR because I think it's important that we close with that, right?
Okay.
Because I think it brings everything full circle. Everything that I've spoken about, all my little stories, it all leads to this one major thing, which is working backwards, right? So the way I do it is on a whiteboard. And what I do is I put a top line. I say, what do I want? Where do I want to be? Or what do I want the company to achieve? What do I want my department to achieve? What do I want my team to achieve in 3 to 5 years, depending on the duration that people give me? I don't like to touch anything in the 5 years. So in 5 years, this is the big win for the company, the team, the department. Big win, moonshot goal. Then from that clarity, I say, okay, what are 3 major components that if these 3 components were to happen, the big win is just guaranteed. It's there. These 3 things combined is the big win. So I call that like the grand strategy, then the strategies. And then what I do is those 3 components that comprise the big win, the working backwards, the destination, I break down to tactics. Okay, this one component, what do I need to win here? And I break it down. And there'll be subcategories for little pieces, right? Same thing with the second, same thing with the third. So I start with where I want to be in 5 years. I finish at what I could do tomorrow. So it kind of looks like a pyramid, right? The big win, the 3 major components, and then what do I need to do to get those components done? And I get as granular as I can, right? It's an old Brooklyn thing. It's called 90% preparation, 10% perspiration. Never let them see you sweat, and let all your success seem mysterious and magical, right? Because they'll see the big win. They might even see the 3 components that made you win in 3 to 5 years, but they'll never see the granularity of the tactics and the sub-tactics of where you started and where you're going. So that's really the whole narration. And now we'll go back to the journey is as important as this destination. Every one of those little pieces that you put into even a subcategory to a subcategory on a tactic that's a month away from now or tomorrow, every little piece means something. The devil's in the details, right? And the more granular you could get, the more you think, the better you get at planning these kinds of things out. When you're done, and it might take you, like I said, with the Twitch student document, it took me almost a year to complete it. Do your diligence, be a subject matter expert. right? You don't need to know how to do every single piece. Absolutely not. That's what hiring for. That's what teams are for. That's what communities for. But at least have an idea of how everything works and where it's going. Because then you can start planning out these strategies. And then when you get good at planning out strategies, you could think of that big W, the grand strategy, right? That's the capital W. The three components are, lowercase w's, where if you do it, it's a win. But if you do all three of them, it's the pie in the sky. So, and that's the journey, that's the destination, right? Again, it all loops back, right? That destination is crystal clear to me with AcadArena. It was crystal clear with Twitch. It's crystal clear in a lot of my aspects in life, right? But I appreciate, I savor, and I really respect each of the steps that I take to get there.
Well, Garvey, I appreciate that TLDR because I think that you're right. It brought everything together. This has been an amazing podcast. I thank you so much for your time. And to our listeners, please consider subscribing to the Academy of Esports. You can go to taoesports.com, select your favorite platform. You can watch us on YouTube. We're there as well. There'll be all the links here, including the opening to Welcome Back Carter. I'm going to have that so people can Welcome Back Cotter. Sorry. So that people can see what Brooklyn looked like back in the 70s and 80s. And once again, I've been your host, James O'Hagan. I've enjoyed spending this time with you today on the Academy of Esports. Take care of yourselves. And please, this week, do not forget to take time to play. Garvey, thank you too so much for your time, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to your community. I really appreciate it.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. Esports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote good physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We can never forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals. The vision of the Academy of Esports is for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. You may follow me on Twitter at Jim O'Hagan. That's at JIMOHAGAN, and through the Academy of Esports account at TAO Esports. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAOesports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.